All right, today we're diving into a group of germs that, are quietly becoming this huge global health threat. They're ancient, they're incredibly tough, and they might just be hiding in a place you would never, ever expect.
I mean, really think about that for a second. We always hear about hospital-acquired infections, right? We're all geared up to worry about those. But what if the real emerging threat is a superbug that has totally mastered survival in the world all around us, including the water flowing right through our homes?
Okay, so these things are called non-tuberculous mycobacteria, or NTM for short, and they are absolute masters of survival. They're literally everywhere, in soil, dust, water. They just shrug off the stuff we use to kill germs, like chlorine, and they build these slimy little fortresses called biofilms inside our pipes. And that incredible resilience, that's exactly why they're becoming such a major public health concern.
So, to really get a handle on what NTM are, we've got to talk about their more famous or infamous cousin, the germ that causes tuberculosis.
Okay, so here's the key difference, and it's a big one. TB needs to spread from person to survive. It's completely dependent on a human host. NTM, they don't need us at all. They're just out there, living their best life in the environment, and we happen to pick them up from places like showerheads or potting soil or even just dust in the air. This makes controlling them a totally different ballgame. You can't just, quarantine someone and call it a day. The source is everywhere.
And get this, we're not talking about just one bug here. The whole family, the genus Mycobacterium, is massive. We're talking over 190 recognized species. Now look, not all of them are bad guys. Only about a third of them are regularly found to cause problems in people. But still, that's a huge number of potential troublemakers.
All right, so let's meet a few of the main players. This is kind of like the most wanted list for the NTM world. Each one has its own unique MO, its own way of causing trouble.
First up, we've got the most common one you'll find anywhere in the world, the Mycobacterium avium complex, or just MAC. If you hear someone talking about NTM lung disease, chances are they're talking about this one. And what's so wild about MAC is that it shows up in two totally different ways. One version looks a lot like classic TB, forming those cavities in the lungs, and it often hits older men who have a history of smoking. But the other form, it's completely different, and it tends to affect a very specific group, older, non-smoking women.
Yeah, this second form actually has this pretty memorable nickname, Lady Windermere syndrome. The idea behind the name is that it might be linked to people who politely suppress their coughs, which unfortunately gives the bacteria a better chance to set up shop in their airways.
Okay, let's move on to our next villain, and believe me, this one is a real piece of work. Meet Mycobacterium abscessus. It's earned its nickname, the antibiotic nightmare, for a very, very good reason. It's literally one of the most drug-resistant bugs we know of, period.
So this thing grows fast, which is pretty unusual for this family of bacteria. It's a huge danger for patients with cystic fibrosis, and it can cause some really nasty infections if it contaminates water used for surgeries or even cosmetic procedures. And the secret to its superpowers? It's a gene called M41 that lets the bacterium literally learn how to fight off an antibiotic after it's been exposed. It can just flip a switch and become resistant.
And last on our list, we've got a real specialist, Mycobacterium ulcerans. This one doesn't rely on brute force resistance, oh no. It has a secret weapon, a really nasty toxin that wages a silent war on our body's tissues. It's what causes a disease known as Buruli ulcer.
So that weapon, it's called mycolactone. What it does is it basically paralyzes our cells. It stops them from sending out the SOS to the immune system. The result is just devastating tissue death. But here's the really creepy part. There's no pain, no inflammation. The immune system is completely in the dark.
So, you're probably asking, how on earth are these things so tough? Well, the answer is all in their architecture. They're built like tiny microscopic tanks.
You gotta see this. The mycobacterial cell wall is this incredible three-layer defense system. You've got your foundation, right? The peptidoglycan. Then there's this unique polymer that acts like a bridge connecting everything. And then, and this is the killer part, this super dense waxy outer shield made of something called mycolic acids. That waxy shield is the key to everything.
And actually, that waxy shield is what gives them their signature move in the lab. It's called acid fastness. Basically, the wall is so tough and waxy that once it absorbs this special red dye, it just refuses to let go, even if you wash it with acid. It's a direct result of that amazing armor.
But wait, there's more. Their defenses don't even stop there. In the environment, they've learned to hide out inside other organisms, like amoebas.
Living inside these little predators protects them, and it might even be like a training ground, kind of pre-adapting them for what it's like to survive inside our very own immune cells.
Okay, so if these things are built like fortresses and have all these survival tricks, how in the world do we fight them? Well, treating an NTM infection is a long, tough road, and the main reason is their unbelievable knack for becoming resistant to our antibiotics.
So let's take a look at macrolides. These are our go-to, most important drugs for this fight. And NTM have two main tricks up their sleeve to beat them. One is what we call inducible. That's where the bacteria has a gene, like that ERM41 we talked about, that it can just flip on like a light switch after it gets a taste of the drug. The other way is constitutive, which just means it has a permanent mutation, so the drug was never going to work from day one. And you see this pattern over and over again. For all sorts of different drugs, the bacteria just change the target. A single tiny mutation in the right gene can make an entire class of powerful antibiotics completely useless. It's this constant evolutionary arms race.
But, it's not all doom and gloom. The huge challenge that NTM presents has actually sparked some incredible innovation, and we're now heading into a really exciting new era for treatment.
See, researchers are thinking outside the box now. It's not just about finding the next antibiotic. One of the biggest game changers is something called host-directed therapy, a new drug called brensocatib, which just got FDA approval for 2025. It doesn't even attack the bug. Instead, it calms down the damaging inflammation in the lungs, which makes it a much worse place for NTM to live. And on top of that, we're seeing brand new antibiotics and really clever updates to old ones.
And then there's this other approach that sounds like something straight out of science fiction, phage therapy. What this is a super personalized treatment where scientists literally go hunting for viruses, they're called bacteriophages, that are the natural enemies of a patient's exact strain of NTM. For people with infections that are resistant to everything else, this is a whole new frontier.
So all of this leaves us with one big, kinda unsettling thought. NTMR are, at their core, environmental bacteria. As our world changes, as the climate warms, as our water systems age, as we disrupt more soil, we might be creating the perfect conditions for these ancient, super resilient bugs to find us. So the real question isn't just, how are we going to fight them? It's what else is out there waiting in the wings as our world keeps changing.